Hi everyone. Oh, thanks for being so quiet and respectful. We are authors of Sinead O'Connor. Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Alexa and I'm on the events team here at Books Are Magic. I'm going to keep this brief because we want to get talking. Tonight we are so excited to have this amazing panel of authors, Sharbari Ahmed, Una Mullally, Millicent Soares, and Zoe Zolbrod, along with the musical guest Monique Bingham, who you'll see in a moment, to celebrate Sonya Huber and Martha Bayne's book, Nothing Compares to You. Before we get started, I just want to point out a few logistics about how tonight's event is going to go. We'll be doing a hand-raised audience Q&A towards the end of the event, so start thinking of some good Sinead questions now. After the talk tonight, everybody will be signing up at the front, which is very unique if you've ever been to one of our events. So we'll sort of figure that out towards the end, but I wanted to give you a heads up. And then if you're joining us on the YouTube live stream, please buy a copy of the book from the link in the description box below. All right, Nothing Compares to You is an intimate and evocative celebration of the life and legacy of music and political icon Sinead O'Connor, featuring these amazing writers we have here tonight. Sonya Huber is an award-winning author of 8 books. Her work has also appeared in the New York Times, Creative Nonfiction, Brevity, The Washington Post, The Atlantic, Fourth Genre, and more. Her essays were named notable in Best American Essays of 2014, 15, 17, and 19. Martha Bayne is the editor of 3 collections of writing about Chicago and the Midwest. A journalist and essayist, her work has appeared in local and national outlets, including the Chicago Reader, the Chicago Reporter, the Baffler, Eater, and the Rumpus, where she was, for 2 years, the Sunday Essays co-editor. She currently works as the regional trade editor at the University of Illinois Press and writes a Substack newsletter called Range of Motion. Sharbari Ahmed is an award-winning writer of film and fiction. She was on the writing team of the TV series Quantico on ABC and adapted the middle-grade novel Rickshaw Girl for the screen. She has also published a novel, a short story collection, and her new collection, The Strangest of Fruit, is forthcoming in the summer of 2025, which is now. It's upon us. It's out. Okay, so it's still forthcoming. All right, and then Una Mullally is a writer and journalist joining us from Ireland tonight. That's a very special treat. Millicent Soares is a writer and cook living in New York. Her newsletter, Attitude Adjustment Facility, is published bi-monthly, focusing on food, culture, work, grief, and the powers that be. Her previous work can be found in Bon Appetit, The Rumpus, Heated, and Diner Journal, where she was an editor-at-large. She published How to Build a Better Pie in 2012. Relevant still. How sometimes she on TV shows. And Zoe Zolbrod is the author of the memoir The Telling, the novels Currency, and Coin of the Realm, which is forthcoming from Northwestern University Press. Her essays have appeared in places such as Salon, HuffPo, The Guardian, and The Rumpus, where she has served as the Sunday co-editor. Without any further delay, please give these wonderful authors a round of applause.
Margaret Thatcher on TV, shocked by the deaths that took place in Beijing. Seems strange that she should be offended. The same orders are given by her. I've said this before now. You said I was childish, and you'll say it now. Remember what I told you. If they hated me, they will hate you. England's not the mythical land of Madame George and Roses. It's the home of police who kill black boys on mopeds. And I love my boy, and that's why I'm leaving. I don't want him to be aware that there's any such thing as grieving. Young mother down at Smithfield, 5 a.m. looking for food for her kids. In her arms she holds 3 cold babies, and the first words that they learn were, please. These are dangerous days. To say what you feel is to dig your own grave. Remember what I told you. If you were of the world, they would love you. England's not the mythical land of Madame George and Roses. It's the home of police who kill black boys on mopeds. And I love my boy, and that's why I'm leaving. I don't want him to be aware that there's any such thing as grieving.
Woo! Hi everyone, thanks so much for being here. My name is Una. I'm a writer and journalist from Dublin. I'm a token Irish on the. This is such a beautiful and unique collection of essays and a book, and how people write through Sinead is really interesting, and often sometimes about, but really kind of into as well. So I just want to start off by asking the co-editors, Sonya and Martha, what was the genesis of this?
I was driving down the road a couple days after Sinead passed away, and had been sort of corresponding with friends, some of them were here, about just how her death hit us in a way that sort of shocked us all. And posted on social media that I wanted to, maybe read other people's essays about their favorite songs. And then it took on a life of its own after that.
Yeah, I mean, that's about it. Like, I think the textured version of that story is that Sonya posted something very off the cuff on her Facebook page and left, and then didn't look at it for a couple hours. And when she came back, there were like 100 comments on it, and people were like fighting over songs and making up rules for how the whole thing worked. And so we sort of had to like put some controls on the whole situation very quickly. And then she enlisted me to help her, which I'm very grateful for.
So that each person obviously contributes a different essay, somewhat related to a particular song. Were you surprised at all by what songs people chose? Were there things thrown up that you thought, wow, that's kind of a deep cut or unusual thing, and other ones that didn't arise? What was that vibe like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the book definitely, perhaps unsurprisingly, skews kind of heavily towards her first two albums, the ones that really were her like big breakout global pop stardom albums, and so that's not surprising. There's a lot of songs from those two, but some of the stuff that comes later and some of the deeper cuts are really made for some rich investigations that I think were very surprising and unusual. I think because they had to really dig into the material in novel ways.
Yeah.
There were a couple songs that I'm surprised didn't actually make the book, but we didn't. I just did a radio interview earlier today, and they asked me if we had given people like parameters, like a short list of songs they could choose from. And I was like, no, it was like anything from the entire catalog. So there's some really random choices in there.
We were, talking with some other radio person about how we were sad that no duets with Shane McGowan made it.
I really want someone to do Haunted.
But Sharbury's essay was another one. It was a very early song in her, in her catalog, and that also. I mean, it was sort of a delight to see where people went with them. And then there were a few songs claimed that were like sort of major songs that then the writer couldn't, other things came up in their lives. So we just sort of had to roll with it.
Yeah. We're going to talk about some of those songs, and we're going to have some mini or micro readings of people's, some excerpts as well. But also I want to ask some of the contributors about your entry points to Sinead O'Connor, because everybody has a different entry point and a different point of connection. Sharbury, could I ask yours first, and then we can get into why you chose heroin?
Okay. Well, mine is boring. She's written up the Pope's picture outside of the I think I like her. Because, and then she was so beautiful, and she had shaved her head, and she didn't seem to care she was beautiful. And there was all these things, and she made it so many men angry, and I found it delightful. And that was my choice. And then then the song came out, Nothing Compares to You, and it was such a haunting song. And that just a very, and I was a kid, sort of. Yeah, no, I was a kid, yeah. I was a teenager when that came out, so that was really definitive for me.
I was delighted to see that Heroin, the song, is in there because when Sinead passed, that I don't know why, like that song became the one that I probably listen to most. I love it for loads of different reasons, partly because I feel like it really sounds like Dublin. I know it's kind of weird to, but it sounds like rain. And yeah, just like tobacco skies, and I feel like there's kind of a sonic link between it and Roy's tune by Fontaines DC. I don't know why I mentioned that, but that's what I feel. I sometimes see those songs as kind of weird sonic twins. But why did you choose Heroin? And then we'll get into a little reading.
You know, it's so interesting you say it reminds you of rain. It reminded me of sunlight on water. And I think I wrote that in the essay, like dappled sunlight on water. It's haunting. It reminded me of Sufi poetry. It was and she wrote it in 1986. She was like 21. It was with The Edge, or however, she was very young. It was well before her fame, and you know, stateside. People always think you become famous once you become famous in the U.S. That's not how it works. But and she was very young, and it just and the funny thing is, before I knew it was part of a movie soundtrack, it reminded me of something that would be in a movie soundtrack. But it did remind me of Sufi poetry because she writes in the song about a beloved, a divine being whose arms she wants to enfold her. And that's what Rumi writes about, the beloved, which everybody thinks is Allah, but could also just be somebody he was in love with, or he loved. The more austere version of it, or Sufi version of it, is it's a divine being. And I don't know, it just reminded me of Sufi poetry. And then, look, she converts to Islam 30 years later. Interesting.
Can we take a little reading?
Yes. The essay is called For Shuhada, which is the name she took when she reverted to Islam, and the song is Heroin. I was scared she killed herself. I wouldn't have judged her if she had, but I didn't want pious people to criticize her. She had lost her son to suicide. I have a son, only one child, and if he died, I am not sure I could exist in this world. It would no longer be recognizable to me. I would be lost with nothing to anchor me. I wouldn't give a tinker's damn about Allah or what was sacrilegious. So many people let Sinead down, starting with her mother. Then the religious community she was born into. This slight-boned girl with the powerful voice, huge watery pools for eyes, and shaven head, which indicates to me that she was not preoccupied with her ethereal beauty, was forever searching for those arms, divine or human, that wouldn't let her fall. So she reverts to Islam, which seemed bizarre even to me, an albeit reluctant and befuddled, but still sort of Muslim person. But Sinead, now Shuhada, was never predictable, and that was part of her genius. Her voice after her death speaks as a soundbite from a 2023 NPR program. Quote, the word revert, it refers to the idea that if you were to study the Quran, you would realize that you were a Muslim all your life, and you didn't realize it. NPR's Scott Detrow interviewed Sheikh Omar Al-Qadri, the chief imam at the Islamic Center of Ireland, and Sinead's spiritual advisor and close friend after Sinead/Shuhada passed. And I started wondering if perhaps I was a real Muslim and didn't realize it. I will never take hijab, which means modesty, because I don't think I'm responsible for the apparent sexual frenzy my hair or boobs will send men into. They need to manage that. But Shahada covered her head even though she had no hair. She wanted to be modest in the face of God. It was showing respect. It was not a managing the male gaze, I think, I will never know. This is what I glean from what she says in her songs and how she says it and how she lived, with humility and honesty. What I do love about Islam is that a middle path is encouraged, but no middleman is needed to find that faith. It's just you and Allah in a room, on the subway, at your desk. They are everywhere and you are right there with them. No physical structure houses Allah. It's personal, intimate relationship. And that is what drew Sinead Shuhada to it. Her friend Al-Qadri tells us that Islam appealed to her because she could communicate with God directly. Hell, I've been doing that my whole life, I thought. Al-Qadri says she also loved the fact that as a Muslim, we believe in the Torah, we believe in the Bible, we believe in the Prophet Jesus, we believe in Moses. Check, 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 double check, I thought. Me too. I like the whole cast. Though I think Abraham would have had to have supervised parental visits when he was with his sons Ishmael and Isaac. He was not entirely trustworthy. She was drawn to Islam because she viewed it as expansive. It made sense to her and was now making sense to me. I listen to Heroin at least once a week, and I'm seeing how Islamic it is. It was co-written with The Edge and recorded in 1986, well before her huge fame. When I reflect on the lyrics, I think, like she said, that she was a Muslim all along. This connection and the reassuring arms she longs for in the song could be human, but I always chose to interpret it as divine, echoing Rumi's unseen beloved who is divine. There is pain, there are mistakes that were made, but take me in, make me whole, confessed but you still feel the shame. Bring me into your arms again, touch these eyes with a broken smile. There is hope, however. The night is long, but the day will come. Could she be talking about the drug? Maybe. Addiction comes in many forms. She left it up to interpretation, just like Islam leaves it up to the individual to decide how they will connect with God or navigate the world as a Muslim. She didn't kill herself. I think life hastened her death. Her friend said she found some measure of peace in the end, but not enough for her body to shed years of pain and trauma. She was, for me, the perfect celebrity spokesperson for Islam. She did it on her terms and with complete humility and imagination. And as a fun byproduct, she was completely unpalatable to white supremacist sensibilities. She did sway at least this skeptic's heart. I am moved to revisit my relationship with Allah in part because of her. Not because she's white, she's Irish, so not a colonizer, or pretty, so pretty. But because she was vulnerable, authentic, and unafraid to be unabashedly herself, a true heroine. I just hope she found her way into the beloved's arms. No one deserves that protection more. Ameen.
So great. Zoe, what was the moment where you first connected with Sinead O'Connor as an artist or being?
It was during the summer of 1988. So when did the album release? It released during the school year. Martha and I were DJs at WOBC, so I knew the album, but I didn't fall in love with it, and it didn't impress itself upon me until I moved into a group house for the summer in Philadelphia. With a lot of young people, very politically active young people. And the women in the house were obsessed with that album. We played it on the boombox 3, 5, 6 times a day. The guys tolerated it. And it was just a very collective experience. And the opening bars remind me of youthful, I want to say, I don't know, is idealism the right word? Figuring out how the world worked to some extent, and how the world worked meaning, not so well, not so fairly, how much there was to protest against, and seeing someone really our age, just a year older than me, doing that so effectively.
Amazing. And you chose Jackie to write about and with, I guess, in your essay. Would you mind reading us part and also talking a little bit about why?
Let's see, there's the cup. So I think I'm going to repeat, I was planning to read the beginning and it will repeat some of what I just said, but in a more thought out way, perhaps. Or I could read another part. All right. right, I'm gonna skip I'm gonna read a different part, we'll see how it goes.
Cool.
So I don't repeat too much. But I think, and as soon as I learned of her death, that was the song that started playing for me, because it's the first cut on the album, and you know, back then we listened to whole albums, so every time we put it in, I honestly can't remember if it was a CD or a cassette tape, but you played the album, and it started there, and so those opening bars were always like, here we are. We're doing it again. Could not be enough. Other than my friend, I didn't know the women in the house that well, but when I look back, our reaction to Sinead feels collective. In my recollection, every time Jackie played, we all screamed, sang the lines that marked the shift in tone. You're all wrong, I said, as they stared at the sand. Because yes, that was it, the revelation that was crystallizing for me. They, the societal mainstream, were all wrong. I had mostly known this already. I wouldn't have ended up in an anarchist group house if I hadn't. The previous semester, I had read bell hooks in my women's studies class, learned the term the white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, gotten A's on my papers like any good anarchist would. During the summer of The Lion and the Cobra, I internalized this knowledge. Sinead's voice and her very existence, experienced in a community equally lit by it, watered the seedlings inside me, helped them to grow. My sense of myself in the world was expanding so quickly that my skin felt tight. What were they wrong about? The list was long, and I added to it each day. I'd already known that the United States was using tax dollars to build yet more nuclear weapons when there were already enough to destroy the whole earth. But that summer I learned more about why that was happening, which was that rich white men got richer from it. Rich men got richer too when corporations like Nestle manipulated people into buying products that were harmful to themselves and the planet. The rich and their bigoted admirers, lovers of hierarchy who didn't notice that someone was standing on their own neck as long as they could punch down, were backed by government enforcers like the Philadelphia Police Department. The PPD had bombed MOVE, a radical black liberation movement, 3 years before, killing 11 people and destroying over 60 homes just a mile away from where I sat on the porch, open-mouthed as people explained the incident to me. How the police had known there were children on the property when they attacked. How 5 of the kids died. Some of my new friends organized their lives around protesting these things. They volunteered with food not bombs, marched with bullhorns and signs, chained themselves to fences at munitions factories. But the wrongs most immediately relevant to many of the young women in the house involved society's gendered expectations. We had grown up with the message, conveyed in ways from subtle to overt, that our primary function was to be decorative and pleasing, and that our bodies belonged to the patriarchy. Oh, the excruciating humiliation that came with realizing how we might have played along with that, even been shaped by it. But now we knew better and we could refuse to comply. The main way we protested was through bodily expression. We didn't have to be told that Sinead shaved off her hair in response to a record label's plan to market her as a pretty girl. The attitude she emanated was as recognizable to us as the back of our hands, the way the sea was to Jackie. One after another, women showed up at the house with shorn heads, rubbing their palms over their stubby scalps for the sensual pleasure and smiling. In other ways, we were already in sync with Sinead's style. We marked the fields of our fresh skin with first tattoos and third or fourth piercings. We stomped around in men's cut-off jeans and big black boots, accented with dashes of thrift store lingerie. We let our boobs hang out and the hair under our arms curl sweatily. If people mocked or leered at us on the street, we happily told them off, at least if we were together. One fun part of reclaiming our bodies was having bed-shaking orgasms. We experimented with who could give them to us, and some of the women started charging money for getting men off, exploring whether that could be a way to take ownership. I'll stop there.
Millicent, what was your Sinead O'Connor radicalisation pipeline?
It's not so much a romantic thing, what it was Spin Magazine probably, which was like where I grew up and where I went to school and who I was around. Like it was either like friends I was with or Spin Magazine or like a John Hughes soundtrack was how I found music. So I just remember, and I don't actively remember this until I got a tape of The Lion and the Cobra maybe like 10 or 12 years ago from the thrift store and been like, I know this album. And then, you know, when you listen to something, you're like, I know every single word and every single beat to this album. And that's what happened there. And it took me somewhere where took me back to then, you know, like, and screaming it. And then I learned a very important lesson where, like, no one else needs to be in the vehicle when that's happening. And someone who has gone through the same thing, but like it does not translate well to others, you know. Jackie does not translate well to others, like screaming it. And so that was like one of my takes, you know, when I was in high school, and just listening to it in my car, because that's what I got.
Your essay is concerned with Drink Before the War.
So I picked that song because Martha and Sonya emailed me and they're like, here are the songs that are left. And I was stop after a day of work, and I was also just like so excited to be asked, and but also like I'm not a Sinead completist, you know, like I'm like what Martha said, like the first two albums, that's where I went. And when I listen to whatever comes up now, I'm like, this is good, but I'm not a completist, and so I was like, well, it's gotta be one of those albums. And so I went with Drink Before the War because it has drinking in it, and listened to The Man at the Liquor Store, and my dad had a bar that sold packaged goods, so, you know, I just like, it's pretty obvious, like it's not anything terribly nuanced of what I did there.
Would you like to give us a reading?
Yes. 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 Drink Before the War is a blues song, not because of any chord progression, but because Sinead sees the world for what it is and laments its hypocrites. She's wary, world-wise narrator, a seer who understands how the world is constructed and organized and how it manipulates. It's a protest song, an outcry against this uncaring, self-righteous world where the past and its glory are permanent. Assimilation is compulsory, and the payoff is just as underwhelming as proper society. We need the man at the liquor store to dull the senses. One drink, a few, whatever we need to continue this apathy, whatever we need to keep doing this. She exploded like a star, Sinead, like a supernova, and she survived her own imploding over and over and over again in a spotlight antithetical to her essence and ethos. Either she was too bright for it or it was too public for her. And she told us exactly who she was so often, and she didn't seem to fear anything. Actually, she didn't let the fear hold her back. Maybe because she had already been through hell. There was nothing left to lose. When I was younger, Sinead's public expression of her vulnerability terrified me. Her honesty was painfully bold, something we punished her for repeatedly. She was a walking live wire, and she put herself out there without a safety net. Then I never believed there was any strength in vulnerability. I thought it made me weak, opening myself up for pain and scrutiny, without realizing, oh, I hate this part. I was like,
Speaking of vulnerability.
that pain and scrutiny already exists. Whether I acknowledge it or not, and it will make itself known. Scrutiny is inescapable. This is a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of world. Now I understand the will, the utter conviction it takes to be vulnerable. I know that the reed bends and the brick breaks, it crumbles. I come from a family of tough women. Just suck it up and don't complain. We are not the squeaky wheels. Hold on. I live in a fat body. My failures, according to society, are on display all the time. I'm always coming from a deficit, so I've always tried to be above reproach, to make up for my body. No one growing up was shy about this grievous error of mine. I couldn't afford to have such liabilities as emotions and needs. I had to find a way to be worthwhile since I failed at being desired. It's the most important thing a female could be. And this is from the song. Somebody cut out your eyes, you refuse to see. Somebody cut out your heart, you refuse to feel. So I became hard. Nothing could touch me. I tried to control the entire, tried to be in control the entire time. With a great cost to me and no one else.
You're awesome. This is amazing writing.
This became my mindset for most of my life. I carried my weight, I was good, and I was definitely strong. I have a great work ethic, common sense, and reason. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't rage, I didn't cry, I didn't yell. I became the subject in the song. Nothing affected me. It couldn't, or I wouldn't be able to keep going. This wasn't just me thinking this was the way it had to be. This was me knowing it was the way it had to be. This was me knowing this was the way it had to be. So I did listen to the man at the liquor store. I used alcohol to cope and enable some sort of carefree nature, to escape and stay in control. I've unintentionally served the patriarchy for most of my life by refusing to be sensitive, loud, open, and expressive. It wasn't that I followed the rules and didn't ask questions. Rather that I refused to be truly human, to fully be myself and to want more from this world for myself. But there's a fine line between protecting oneself or thinking you are and maintaining the powers that be. It's something I just can't do anymore. It's my light.
Well done. This Saturday marks 2 years since Sinead O'Connor died, which feels simultaneously like no time at all and then loads of time. We were talking about her funeral earlier. Her funeral in Wicklow, just south of Dublin, the actual ceremony was private, but the procession was public. I don't know if anybody here was there. I was there. My wife Sarah was there, and it was really profound to have thousands of people on the street. And the interesting thing about it was all sorts of like cultures and subcultures, and people who are like into reggae, punks, rockers, like people of all ages, like teenage girls, people in their 70s, 80s, and I think the scope of her reach is so profound, and in a way, she's not in a way, in reality, surreality, consciousness, I don't know, but she's still alive, it doesn't feel like I don't know, she's still there. And I was just wondering why just Martha and Sonya, because obviously you guys brought this book into existence, that resonance, why do you think it's still there? Sinead's resonance.
I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot, just this past week. It's been a surreal, crappy, insane week for any survivor. Well, it's also a crappy, insane week for 1,000 million other reasons. But just with the circling of Trump Epstein stuff, I'm just thinking, it's just the spiral of you guys know, it's all in your email inboxes. And I keep thinking that she is still with us because her truth-telling in support of survivors was some of the first public discussion that I feel like broke open this whole question, and the waves are crashing down now.
Right.
What Sonya said. I will say that I was privileged to be in Ireland over the last week, and we did a couple events there. And bringing this book to Ireland was something I was really nervous about, and was so overwhelmed by the response and that very, very vivid feeling of what Una just said, that Sinead is so alive and so present to everybody across a huge spectrum, and to the point where it seems like everyone we ran into had like met her or saw her cousin who played in her band at some point. And so I'm not, I wonder if that's actually true in the U.S., but I do think it's to the same degree that it is in Ireland. It really was a profound eye-opening experience for me. But I do think that she speaks to this notion of a woman speaking truth to power is something that we desperately need in the United States right now. We've needed it since 1988, but we definitely really need it right now. It's such a regressive moment culturally and politically for women, for anyone who's gender nonconforming, for anyone who's willing to speak up for victims of abuse. And all the, really anyone who's really willing to put their neck out there the way that Sinead did and suffered the consequences for. And I think that that's why she's so resonant right now. In the 2 years since her death, people really realized here in the U.S., she became less present, I think, for some people in the U.S. in the latter part of her career. I feel like she was coming back into public consciousness, maybe I think we talked about this, in the last couple of years she's having a little bit of a comeback. She had her memoir come out, there was the film. And so she had more of a public presence. She was working on a new album, but, sorry, I'm rambling. But in the US, when she died, there was this massive public reckoning of oh my God, we took her for granted for a while. And now we realize what we've lost. And that feels like the reason to me that she's so, people feel so urgently about her now.
Yeah, I think there's two completely different timelines to do with Sinead O'Connor with America versus Ireland.
Yeah.
What happened to post SNL, which is only broadcast in America. Obviously everybody in Europe knew and saw about it, and it was oh my God. But in Ireland, it was whoa, Sinead's done something punk again.
Yeah.
It did feel this puritanical mania.
Yeah.
And she didn't go away in Ireland, and her albums were very celebrated, and she kept touring. And of course, she had a lot of mental health issues, and the death of her son was, a devastating thing. But I think one of the things that people can, I think America has this regret reflex with things, oh, I feel so bad, we fucked someone over again. But if people haven't seen the documentary that Catherine Ferguson made about Sinead O'Connor, it's an amazing documentary, obviously remembering the memoir too, and Sinead got her flowers with Remembrance, and she was really happy with how that went. I remember reviewing the book for the Irish Times and her contacting me being this is so great, blah blah blah. She was really thrilled with all of that. So I think people need to know that as well. Don't sit in the fucked up. Basically, Ireland says it's okay. It's not okay. And also in terms of the artists who are, there's such a failure. There's a lot of failure in the American cultural sphere right now to speak truth to power. Be that with authoritarianism, be that to genocide, be that to so many different things. The Irish artists especially are doing a lot of work on that. They really are, from Fontaines to CMA to Kneecap to Murder Capital, there's to Kojak, to so many artists, and Hosier as well. And people need to, the spirit that she has is these kids are literally wearing her t-shirt performing, but we want to get to some questions. Or if people could keep them short and concise and direct, that would be really great. If anybody has anything to say or ask.
Or we can keep talking.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
Okay. As a regenerate, male rocker of a certain age, what did the boys not? Hi, Martha. What did the boys in that era not get about Sinead? What did we miss?
What did, for the YouTube stream, this is what did the boys not get about Sinead in the Sinead era, and what did I miss?
I don't feel like I can necessarily be the spokesperson for that, but I think that she really touched a chord with women of our generation. As you know, the underground music scene of the 80s was quite male dominated. And I grew up in that scene, and I accepted that as what music was and what being cool was, and it was a scene that I was very excited to be a part of. But at the same time, when Sinead O'Connor appeared, she was so cool, but not recognizably to me part of the underground that I understood in the United States. That it was this kind of like jarring and very eye-opening moment that took me by surprise, because I certainly wasn't paying any attention to the Irish music scene at the time. There was no social media. We didn't, I think you missed out on the fact that she knew something that you didn't, and was speaking to women in particular in a language that they understood, that maybe it didn't matter that men didn't understand.
And I think one of the things, she had amazing range, and she was very soft sometimes, right? And you would hit the cassette in a certain moment, and her voice would sound very gentle and sweet. And the idea of range, emotional range, and having the ability to inhabit that full range of emotions is something that I think just gets read as soft, right? Like, Kirkus called this collection maudlin and sentimental. What? Yeah. And I'm imagining the demographics of the young person, man, who might have written that. But I think Sinead got read the same way. Like, these essays are not maudlin and sentimental. A lot of them are fucking pissed. But because there's an element of softness, I think that gets read as not hardcore enough.
Anybody else?
I feel like I can say this because I just cried. And I've listened to a lot of hard music, and I think the thing is like, not what are you missing, but the idea that like, you're missing something, like she's got to perform for you, and that's gotta be like there's something with so much, I don't know, it's like, what are you missing? You're missing, that music at that time was like really perfunctory in a way, and really hard, but also performative, wildly performative. And I think, and trying to be tough. And I think that what was being missed was like, here's this person who is like, keeps being so tough that she can't be stopped, to her own detriment, quite honestly, and I think that that's sort of where like sometimes music, you're just like, I've been in music for a long time, and it's not anything you can pinpoint, but like, here's this person like who just kept standing back up, and we hated her. Right. People hated her. People were so violent towards her. No. And like true punk would be like, man, I don't like her music, but Joe Pesci wants this woman dead. Right. And what's more punk than that?
Can I ask John a question? Because we went to college together. So, and when I look back on my relationship with Sinead, I moved away from her because she was a major label artist.
Yeah.
And that was so uncool. And I think I had to get over that fact before
Chrysalis.
So the more popular she got before her, well, the more I was like, I can't like an artist that's this popular, even if I do. And so, and she speaks differently, right? You're trying to be a woman in the world, and how am I gonna be that? And she did present a model that was not very evident, wasn't very available at the time, but you can see we were all leaning toward it, you saw us. We were, but if you aren't looking for that model yourself, and she's on a major label, and she's got a #1 hit on MTV, you're not probably going to think it.
I just want to add myself that I feel like I underplayed the reaction to the ripping of the Pope in Ireland. It's not like people were like, that's fine. Because obviously it was a completely dysfunctional quasi-theocracy where women were destroyed for every other which reason. So I don't want to let Ireland off the hook on that side. I'm not in mind for the cost of
Any other questions? Thoughts?
I have a question for you guys. What artists today do you feel, not mimicking a spirit or anything, but do you feel are like, yes, channeling something that feels authentic and unapologetic?
Oh my, are you asking a bunch of
I'm gonna say I just saw Janelle Monáe.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I think she's quite a bit younger than me. She's not a youth. I don't know.
I don't think her music is fierce or edgy or anything like that, but physically, Billie Eilish, I find the fact that she covers herself up and she refuses to bend to the notion of what a young female pop star should look like. I feel like, that reminds me, not her music necessarily, but her presentation.
Her
Reminds-
engagement with the music industry.
Yeah, she keeps her distance and I
Yeah,
like that.
she's also an amazing songwriter.
She is.
Any other thoughts, questions?
This isn't like a totally formed thought, but I would like to hear what you guys think about. I was thinking about her music and how it's related to catharsis in some capacity, which came up for me because when I worked in a restaurant in Brooklyn, after hours every night, we would blast "Nothing Compares to You" and all stand on the bar and sing "I Can Eat My Dinner in a Fancy Restaurant." And it wasn't like just because we were heartbroken by something or someone. It was something else, it was like, it was defiance, or it was claiming or owning something. And I think you've all been talking about that, but I just wanted to put that out there.
So this is a question about how Sinead's music and voice and performance relates to catharsis.
Well, she herself, I'm gonna mangle this and apologize, Sinead. But she herself said that at some point those first two albums were catharsis. Like, she was very open about the fact that she was working her shit out in those two albums. And later on in her career, she was like, I've been through a lot of therapy and I actually don't want to sing those songs anymore. So yes, it is very cathartic. Again, there's that emotional honesty there that is what people connected with. And then you combine it with like a killer melody and beat and just like, taps into that ugly cry moment in your body that you need. Who hasn't put on a record because they needed to cry or scream at some point and they couldn't kind of access that emotion any other way.
I think she was a master too of, like, my song for the anthology was Last Day of Our Acquaintance, which, talk about cathartic. Like, I listened to that 100 times at once and, it's always feels new. But the idea of the same lyrics and where she starts with this whisper and where she ends up with drums and that's done a lot in pop songs, but I feel like the way she does it is special because of the power that she could unleash. It felt like this isn't just for music, this is her on purpose holding nothing back. And I feel like that very element in the songs is something that we all, I don't want to speak for everybody, but for me, was that no holds barred, like, shriek if you need to from this beautiful beginning. Even that sound was a little bit untethered, unmanaged. The music was first, I totally get it.
You kind of wrote about this in the piece that you wrote yesterday? Do you remember?
I really like Alison McCabe's piece, that's her name, right? The last piece in the anthology. Oh no, I'm skipping ahead. It was Loretta Hannon. I like both those pieces, because reading the essays all together really made me think about Sinead's relationship to memoir writing and why so many of us were so affected by her death. And memoirs can get kind of shit for, cause, you know, like as if writing for catharsis or cathartic writing makes it less than in terms of a literary creation. And she pushes back on that notion, I believe, and the idea that processing our grief is an important part of not just healing, but expression and growth and knowledge, and being able to do that in art is, I think it's a powerful example for anyone in any of the arts, and to not be afraid of our own pain, or to not be afraid of creating art is helping us in some way, like to feel, and that's legitimate.
I think also the technical prowess in her vocal and how she actually utilizes that, because in a lot of songs, both structurally and in terms of how her vocal progresses throughout the song, there's this sense of momentum. And in a sonic storytelling resonant way, that brings you to this kind of crest. You have it in Last Day of Our Acquaintance, amazing example, but also Troy, and also Jerusalem, and like stuff that just like kind of comes and crashes. And also how she used microphone as her instrument, like almost like theremin-like. And she's very, very, very fastidious with that. Like, I saw her sound check a few times, you know, outdoor venues, or once like totally on my own in the Olympia Theatre in Dublin, and she would be checking her vocal for like an hour and a half.
Wow.
Like very, very, very particular. So that was also not an accident. She was a very technically pedantic and fastidious artist as well in that way.
That's one of the things I didn't know as a young person, who just responded totally to the music and the image of her on the cover of the CD. And I think we did have the British version, or it was like a big thing to have the
The American version where she's like this, and then the version where she's screaming,
The point is, we knew hardly anything about her. That it's not like now you know everything about everyone. And then to find out later that she demanded to reproduce the album because it wasn't meeting her expectations at such a young age, to demand that made sense and made it more meaningful in a way. Like every choice in there more meaningful, and perhaps why it was so resonant, even though it was a
I want to thank everyone at Books on Magic, amazing audience. Meet Bingham, these fantastic writers. Obviously buy the book, get it signed, and it's a privilege to be here and to listen to you all, and for all of your ears. Thank you very much.
Still with us on the YouTube live stream, check out the link in the description box. And if you're here with us live, we're sold out. So if you want to order a book, we can help you with that at the front. This is about to get a little bit technical. Yes, that is the goal. So for signing, I'm going to ask that we just wait 1 second so I can move this tripod, but then y'all will line up down the middle, and we're going to do a little bit of a flow chart this way. And we're going to keep this open so we can break down the space and turn it back into a bookstore. Thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure to have you.